Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Chasing Dreams podcast with Charlie and Justin. We are on episode 124, just creeping up the numbers and racking them up week to week, man.
Yes, sir.
It's pretty
Yes,
cool.
sir.
I just like seeing that number increase and kind of in retrospect, looking back and realizing that we've done a lot of episodes. I actually had a third grade girl at my school come up to me and ask me how many episodes of the podcast I had. And I said, well, we're on, I think episode 123 was our last one. And she was like amazed. She's like, well, I just started episode 1, so I got some catching up to do.
Oh man, I think she might be my favorite listener.
So
Sorry,
we have
everybody.
people that are starting on episode 1, which actually, to be honest, I've never really gone back and listened to any. I mean, I take that back. The only episodes that I've gone back and listened to were guest episodes. I've never
Yeah,
listened to anything that was just you and I, just casually talking, just like the two of us, like our typical episodes. The guest ones, I actually, to be fair, I think I've re-listened to all of them at least once.
same here. I know I listened to the guest one, and there's actually been a couple. Not that any one particular guest was more important than the other, but there's been a couple that I've had some significant impact, like physically to myself, that I went back and listened to several times.
Yeah.
Maybe not the entire episode, but skip through to a point where I know they're going to talk about a certain topic and really pay attention and try and take notes and it's done. And honestly, that's kind of what it's about, right? Is for us to learn and the listeners to learn, and so you know, use it like a if you were to thumbnail or a thumb tag a book, and a specific chapter or specific line in a book. It's kind of the same thing for me.
Well, there were also some additional episodes now that I think about that I did go back and listen to, but there was always reasons behind it. So I would go back and listen to a particular episode just to reference something like because you and I, there were episodes in the past where we gave actionable steps or like New Year's resolution episodes where we talked about what our goals were specifically. And I kind of went back to a few of those just to kind of um, almost for an accountability check for myself to see things that I said on earlier episodes. But other than that, I don't really listen to them too much. I kind of lose track of them when they're every single Saturday for the better part of
Yeah,
2+ years, you know.
yeah, and same here. And like actually, that was one of the episodes that I've listened to that was just you and I was last year's New Year's resolution episode. Before I re-listened to it again before we recorded this year, but about halfway through the year, I cleaned out my personal truck when I got my work truck and accidentally threw the notebook away because it got wet in the back seat that had all like my podcast notes. Somehow it got thrown away or something, but because it had gotten wet. So I wanted to go back and take some notes from that episode in particular. Just so I could try to keep myself on track and accountable.
Well, I think it was
So it's
cool how
fun.
you and I, speaking of the notes and stuff, talked about it before too, the progression of how things work logistically behind the scenes. So when we started with this podcast, it was kind of just you and I talking, but we had an agenda and we had a very, very lengthy list of notes of things we wanted to talk about, the order we wanted to talk about them in. And more or less, it was really just us wanting to provide value to people. Figured if you and
Right.
I were just talking casually like we're doing right now, there wouldn't be much value add. At least that's what we had assumed at the time. So we tried to have some semblance of structure with how we were going to go about the episode to the point where we would get upset after each episode because there was always a multitude of things that we would miss where we'd say, oh, well, we
Right.
had to talk about this, or we ran out of time, we couldn't fit this in. And I think it's funny now how, well, coincidentally enough, today we actually mentioned something that we wanted to talk about, but very rarely do we mention anything. When we have our guests, we obviously have an agenda and some things that we'd like to cover with them based on what their professions are and what their areas of expertise are. But when it's just you and I, it's kind of like, hey, do you want to talk about anything today in particular? No, let's go. And then we just roll with it. And it generally comes out to be, I wouldn't necessarily give us too much credit and say high value, but it comes out to be
Valuable.
moderately valuable, I would assume.
Yeah, that's kind of where I have my mind on it too. So it is. I enjoy the heck with it. Let's just push record and go with it. Episodes. Those ones are so fun because they always, to me, I always have something to reflect on for sure.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. So what's going on with you this week, man? We talked last week how I was a little bit MIA in terms of the gym just because of some physical illness that I was going through. And then that kind of exacerbated some of the other issues like lack of sleep that I was having and stuff. So last episode, I talked about how I kind of took some time off from the gym a little bit, just out of necessity for my own health. And you kind of did the same thing this week.
Yeah, absolutely. So it was not health related. And it was 100% life related. I had several long nights at work, not long nights like bad, but just long days where I had the time had gotten away from me and I didn't get home until 8, 9 o'clock at night. And with a child and things to get done at home. And I know everybody's got kids or everybody's got things, but I found myself a couple nights middle of the week where it was 10, 11 o'clock before I was getting to bed. And I just was so tired. So I just took 2 days off. And then I had to go on a real long trip for work for a couple meetings that were out of town, heck, out of state even. And I knew that, early in the week we had talked about taking Thursday off. So it just ended up being Tuesday and Wednesday were 2 days that I ended up being home real late. So I took Tuesday, Wednesday off, Thursday off. And then when I got home Friday, I was like beat and I was like, there's no way I'm getting up early in the morning Friday. So essentially I've taken this whole week off. Um, and you know what? At first I was kind of upset because I love being in the gym. You know what I mean? Like it's top three things I love to do in my day for
Mhm.
sure. Um, but did some reflecting on it today. I actually traveled to take my daughter for her first Easter egg hunt today. And while I was driving, the girls were both asleep in the truck. And I was starting to think about it, and I did my Saturday morning weigh in today and recognized that I'm down 20 pounds in the last 2 weeks. And coincidentally enough, the last 2 weeks I haven't, you know, been in the gym like a substantial amount of time. Haven't been out on the track or out walking or running at all, and I've still lost weight. So obviously something's working, right? I mean, sleep must be okay, water must be okay, and my diet obviously is controlled. So sorry, my voice is kind of cracky, but I feel like that's something that we could talk about is not hyperly focusing. Obviously, if you're bodybuilding or if you're in a sport that you have to hyperly focus on every single training session, that's one thing. But if you're just a lifestyle person where you're just trying to be the best you can be in a normal life, don't get too bent out of shape on things, life coming up and you missing the gym.
Yeah.
To the point where you derail yourself, because that's what would happen to me in the past is I didn't go to the gym today, so I'm just going to eat whatever I want, and now you have two things compounding. You didn't do anything and you didn't do anything,
Yes.
like, so I think that's something that's worth talking about. And I'm interested to hear your point of view, from like the scientific side of it, because you definitely have the brain of weight loss and strength building and bodybuilding and athletics in general. So I love to hear your point of view when I bring some crazy topic up. You either usually make me think of a completely different direction, or you validate and then give me like real facts to build on.
Well, I think that there's a lot of intuition that goes along with anything fitness and health related. Like most people, even if you don't know specific reasons behind why you're feeling a certain way, why you're making progress, why you're not making progress, you can number one problem solve. So you can kind of connect the dots of, okay, when I was losing the most amount of weight, I was doing this. And when I was gaining weight or plateauing, I was doing this or wasn't doing that. So you can kind of like the phrase success leaves clues, look at the
Right.
clues of what you were doing at certain periods of time and then go back to the drawing board and try to align those the best you can. And then the other thing to consider is like how you feel. So even if you don't have specific rationale to support it, how you feel is probably going to be the best indicator of whether or not the progress is good or sustainable or whatever. I've put pretty high value lately on recovery too, and I say that from the type of the perspective of someone who doesn't need to focus on working harder. So a lot of people are hyper focused on recovery, and they don't need to be because they haven't earned the right to be focused on recovery, so to speak. So you don't have to worry about how many cryotherapy sessions you're going to get a month if you don't train hard enough in the gym. Or you
Right.
don't have to worry about spending 45 minutes doing mobility work post workout if your squat sucks. So
Right.
it's kind of like a pyramid or like a hierarchy where the bulk of your stuff needs to be the actual work. So if you have that in place, which I feel like I do just based on experience, I've been putting a lot into recovery. So you and I talked about that last episode. That was like a big focal point that we ended up just organically talking about was the importance of recovery. And I think there's a lot to be said about that. I was listening to a podcast with some pro bodybuilders earlier today that I listen to frequently, and they were like all on a kind of general consensus that they never train more than 2 days straight with high intensity, which you think about it, and that's actually not very much. So you have two heavy workouts on Monday, Tuesday, and then you have to take a break on Wednesday. And then let's say you
Right.
get back at it Thursday, Friday, you have to take a break on Saturday. So there, a lot of them, or a few of them, were being pretty adamant about that 2 on 1 off strategy. And most people I know get caught up in thinking that more is better. And for most people, more would be better to a degree. But training frequencies of like some people who do 7 days a week or people who do um, 2 day sessions, one of two things is going to happen. Either they're not going to make progress and because of injury or hyperinflammation, lack of recovery, whatever, or they are going to make progress. And the people that are able to make progress with that high a degree of sustainability just have unbelievable amounts of ability to cope and to just physically adapt to the stimulus. So maybe some of that's nature and just biological factors, genetic factors, and maybe some of it's just true nurture. Like, they're eating a ton of food, they're hydrating super well, they have a low stress job, they have tons of sleep. Maybe they work from home, so they have all the food readily available to space out their supplements and their meal times. And it's just their lifestyle is kind of conducive to allowing them to do that. So I think going back to answer your question, that sometimes putting the foot on the brakes a little bit allows the body to calm down and relax and release and not be in this hyper inflamed, hyper responsive state. Because I also think that progress is super mental too. Not that necessarily like you have it in your head, you're making progress and you're not, or you do think, uh, or you don't think you're making progress and you are. I mean, just with like neurotransmitters and stuff. Like, I feel like there's a lot to be said about what your brain is like in terms of progress, because it's kind of like what came first, the chicken or the egg. But I can tell you
Right.
that the times in my life I've made the most progress, I was always in the best mental state. Like, life was good,
Right.
career was good, relationships good, family good, stuff like that. And then there's times where I've been in chaotic instances, and my progress in the gym was minimal or non-existent, maybe even digressed or worked backwards. And the reason I liken it to like um, the whole chicken and egg scenario is because you could say, oh, well, you're not making progress because you're in a bad mind state, or maybe you're in a bad mind state because you're not making progress. And so I think that's kind of like it fuels off of each other. There's like some unfortunate negative synergy there. 2 + 2 = 6. So I don't know. I just feel like recovery is a big aspect, and continuously going to the gym is a stress, not only physically, but there's a mental stress too, even if you like it. Like for us, we get to the gym super early. So when you do that, what's the most anabolic form of recovery you have? Sleep and nutrition.
Sleep.
So you're cutting out sleep by getting up early to go to the gym. Like I've mentioned on the podcast before, I heard this saying, and I wish I knew who said this, So I give, I guess, credit to the anonymous person, whoever you are, that came up with this phrase, but it said something along the lines of waking up. I think it might, you know what? Come to think of it, it might have been Stan Efferding. So I don't know if people are familiar with Stan Efferding. At one time, he was labeled as the world's strongest professional bodybuilder. So I was actually at the show where he earned his pro card and turned pro. And he was also a competitive power lifter who I think had like the highest raw total ever at his body weight. It was like over 2,000 pounds. Has a ton of world records in bench, squat, and deadlift. He's also Thor, the Mountain.
Yeah.
He is Thor's nutritionist or coach for all his nutrition stuff. I know he works with John Jones now in the MMA world. He's the founder of the Vertical Diet. So Stan's really, really well known in the industry. And I think it was him who initially said this, said waking up an hour early to do cardio is like stepping over $100 bill to pick up a penny or something like that.
Oh, I remember. Yeah, I remember the first time you told me about that, and I was like, that makes total sense.
So like the hour, basically what he's suggesting is the hour of cardio or getting up early to do a workout or whatever, that is, it pales in comparison of actually getting good quality, lengthier sleep. And, you know, like we have this thing in our friends group, like when we're training, where there's really, really good, there's just like this really, really good, almost like accountability system where
Yes.
we don't want to let each other down. When somebody can't come to the gym, there's like an apology that follows it. Like, hey guys, I'm really sorry. And it's genuine. Like when we sleep in, if one of us oversleeps and we don't make it to the gym, there's like a guys, I'm sorry I let you down. This won't happen again. There's a really, really high degree of accountability, which is awesome. For me, I've gotten to the point now, which is good because I no longer feel pressure to get there just because I feel like that's the right thing to do, because sometimes that's not the right thing to do. Sometimes the right thing to do is to be accountable enough, because accountability just doesn't mean showing up all the time. Sometimes accountability is, hey guys, I really want to go to the gym, but I'm going to have to sleep in tomorrow. It's a little bit late tonight. I'm not getting the quality sleep that I have needed the past couple days. If I get up 3 hours early to go to the gym, that's just going to exacerbate it worse. So I'm going to have an extra 3 hours of sleep here. I'll catch you guys the next day. So
Right.
there's some form of accountability there too, I think, which is important.
I just think it's important to understand that, like, the biggest part, like, everybody, I don't know what I want to say. Uh, it's it's known that most of the people in this industry, as far as weight loss or strength building or just, you know, the gym in general, the 2 hours that you train are not the most important hours of the day. You know, the 6 to 8 hours that you sleep, and then the rest of the time that you're eating and drinking and functioning throughout the day, those are the hours that you're going to make your progress. You're just supplementing it with the gym.
Yes. Yep.
So it's not to being accountable. And to me, is when you sleep in, or when you decide that you're not going to go to the gym today, or when you take that random day off, that you have to stay accountable to the rest of the journey. So the plan is not just as a push or pull or leg day. It's push, pull, or leg day, and I have to drink a gallon of water at minimum. I have to eat my 3 meals. I have to get 5 to 7 hours of sleep, whatever your time of sleep is. But that is your whole plan. So aborting everything because you didn't go to the gym, or aborting the gym because you didn't eat, you know, you're like, you're hurting yourself twice. So you have to stay accountable to the whole plan, even when one little piece falls.
Yep. Totally.
You
Without
know,
question.
like, yeah, I think every single person that I've ever met has a wise person in their family that says Rome wasn't built in a day.
Yep.
So like the plan is a journey. It's you don't plan for one day. You plan for a lengthy time set of time. So 6 weeks, 10 weeks, you know, a year, or the rest of your life, whatever it is. So it's not going to be derailed in one day unless you derail it on your own.
Well, I think that my favorite saying off of that too is Rome wasn't built in a day, but it was worked on every day.
Exactly.
So, like you said, and we've talked about that before because I'm guilty of that too, dude. I self-sabotage sometimes with like my biggest thing is nutrition. So
Yeah.
for me, if I have a day where I eat a cheat meal or whatever, there's been times where I said, okay, I already screwed up the day by having a cheat meal. I'll just make it a cheat day. But that's completely unnecessary. There's no reason to self-sabotage the rest of the day. You could still have 4 or 5 meals in just because you screwed up one. But it's almost like if it's not perfect, then and see, that's my issue is sometimes, you think, oh, if it's not perfect, then why does it have to be perfect or terrible? Why can't it be good? Like, why can't you just,
Right.
why does it have to be, oh, well, I didn't make it perfect. So now I'm just going to say, screw the whole thing. And
Right.
I think
Exactly. So,
that a lot
go
of
ahead.
people do that, man. That's just like a self
I,
sabotaging behavior that a lot of people get into.
and my favorite part, my favorite day as far as fitness goes in this whole journey of mine that started almost 3 years ago was, I'm going to reference something that the OG listeners will remember. Excuse me, is the last lie. So the day that I told the doctor that I was, 525 when I was 526 pounds, I knew that I weighed that at home, but I told him I was 525 pounds because I was embarrassed that 1 pound was going to make a difference, right?
Yeah.
That morning, I ate really bad. Like I left that doctor's appointment in a bad mental place. And going to the pharmacy, I stopped and got a whole bunch of bad food and ate it all. And from that point forward, for a whole year, for me to go off of my diet was like you had to basically say, dude, you're not going to lose any more weight if you don't, because it was like accountability. Like,
Mhm.
all right, that's out of the way. But I capitalized the rest of that day and then every day moving forward. So it to me, like that stuff's so important to recognize the small failures, but build off of them. So if you know eat, like you said, eat one meal that's bad, like
Yeah.
you got in a bind, your boss said, hey, let's go to lunch, and it's not what you should have ate. Don't worry about it. When it comes to your next meal, eat your scheduled meal, do your scheduled thing. That one meal is not going to kill you, but don't let that one meal be every meal.
It's a very, very tough mental balance to
Oh,
kind of
it's
be in
horrible.
between that, where
Yeah.
you also, because then we could play devil's advocate, and we know people, everybody listening knows people that become too lax.
Oh,
And
I am people.
well, there you go. So
Yeah.
even you can admit that, like, there's times where you say, okay, well, I failed at this meal, or I screwed up my diet a little bit, or I took a step back, but that's okay because I'll get the next one. And we've had full episodes just dedicated to the fact of like, maybe some of us at times need to be a little bit more, because we always get hypercritical of people that obsess over failure. But
Yeah.
the reality is that people who obsess over failure are usually ones that don't fail. So
Right.
usually
They
the
don't.
most
Yeah.
successful people I know are obsessing over failure. The ones that say failure doesn't matter and it's part of the process and you can learn from it, generally those people don't make a lot of progress. That's just the reality. Now, all those cliche things they're saying are true, but if you get into a mentality where you're too accepting of failure, then you're going to create comfort with it. And you and I know, especially you, because that's one of your things, is you're going to have to be uncomfortable. Failure has to remain an uncomfortable, undesirable, avoid at all costs type of situation that you're in.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You have to be so you have to be so comfortable being uncomfortable that you refuse to get comfortable. If that
Yeah,
makes sense.
in a
Like,
roundabout way, it certainly does.
yeah, like you can't you like physically you cannot get to the point where you're like, oh, I'm good. Like because that's what happened to me. I got down to 299 pounds. In 1 year, I lost 226 pounds in 1 year, almost to the minute, and I got comfortable.
Yep.
I was good. And then literally in a year, I undid almost half of that. So I'm like man enough and bold enough to admit that and recognize that. But mark my words, comfort is not something that I get to do anymore
Mhm.
because it's just not worth it.
And that's exactly what will keep you going forward, man.
Exactly. So,
Well, I
yeah.
think that's a good place to go to a commercial break. There are some training updates that I kind of wanted to share. I'm sure you don't have a whole heck of a lot just because, like we just spoke about, you had a week off, but I had some cool experiences this week in terms of training that I'd like to share with you guys. So let's go to a quick commercial break and we'll talk more about those when we come back. As listeners of the Chasing Dreams podcast, we know that you demand the highest quality at all times. If you're interested in quality, look no further than Beast Mode Baking. Beast Mode Baking aims to bring the highest quality, creative, and of course delicious baked goods to your home with nationwide shipping. All orders need to be pre-ordered to ensure they're packed fresh and shipped out to you as soon as possible. Beast Mode Baking offers a flat rate of $15 for shipping due to the size and weight of the cookies and doughs. So if you're interested in Beast Mode Baking, please contact CEO Shannon Knorr. That's at SKNORR13 on Instagram and order your delicious baked goods today, because every time you support them, you're supporting the podcast as well. And we are back from our commercial break. All right, prior to the break, Justin, you and I were talking about training on your end, and we talked a little bit about recovery, and that kind of sparked a discussion that forayed into talking about not self-sabotaging. We had a lot of good topics there. One of the things that I wanted to talk about, I said that, every episode you and I go over training updates, and I had some interesting experiences. So I have a client that is based out of Texas, although to say he has a home would probably be a fallacy because he travels for work. So him and his family, actually the way I met him is him and his family are up in Ohio right now. He was working on a large plant that was being built. That job is finished. Now he is likely headed actually 3,000 miles across the country out towards Portland, Oregon, where he's probably going to be working, although that's not for sure a thing. But he is from Texas originally, has a super deep accent like you would stereotypically expect. Real good guy. Well, he and I met when he was up here in Ohio working, hooked up for some nutrition work, been coaching him as of late. We kind of did like a few months together. Then he kind of went on hiatus. He had a shoulder injury that he was trying to work around, but really what he needed was some time off and possibly some imaging and seeing a specialist for it. And what I told him was, I can help you through this, but for me, if you're not going to be able to exercise regularly and you're kind of at a stressful point in your job and stuff, maybe we need to revisit this later on down the road, which we did. So long story short, we're back working together. So he is shipping out of town, or was shipping out of town. He had like a week left, and I hadn't seen him for a while. I said, you know what? Why don't we get some workouts in together before you leave? So this week I met up with him a handful of times in the morning. Same thing, just obviously. Well, he's in PA right now, just over the Ohio border. So I ended up getting up a little bit earlier than normal. So I was usually leaving the house about 3:15, 3 o'clock in the morning. Drove over to Pennsylvania, trained with him, and then drove back in time for school in the morning. So when he and I trained, the gym we trained at was a Planet Fitness. So that's where he had been going. And a Planet Fitness is a 24-hour facility. And everybody knows that that's like a bodybuilder's no-no. Like kind of like the stereotype that if you take training seriously, you can't be caught dead in a Planet Fitness. And it's just kind of like a running joke of the industry, especially people who train seriously. So bodybuilders, power lifters. One of the things that they're known for is having what's called a lunk alarm, which is where if you slam weights or grunt, a lunk is their version of your stereotypical bodybuilder or power lifter. Somebody in a tank top, real juiced up, big muscles, grunts a lot, just the unfortunate painted reality of what people expect bodybuilders to be like, just your typical meathead.
Right.
So that's kind of like what Planet Fitness is like in a nutshell. And you're kind of shunned in the bodybuilding / competitive realm if you train there. But I'll tell you what, I was pleasantly surprised. So to give everybody,
so was this your
what's that?
Sorry, was this your first experience in a Planet Fitness?
Yeah, I'd never been in one before. Yeah.
Copy.
This was the first time I'd ever stepped foot in a Planet Fitness. I know some people that are like bodybuilders with respectable physiques that train there. One thing that I'll tell you is they have no free barbells. So they have dumbbells and they have machines and they have cables and they have Smith machines, but they don't have any true barbells, like just a bare bar that you can load weights on, which was interesting because I've obviously never been to a gym without barbells. I think it's $10 a month. And if I'm not mistaken, you get unlimited tanning, and they have like these massage rooms where you have massage chairs. It's really, really nice equipment. It was a really, really big facility. The showers were amazing. They have like very, very spacious showers, and they have the detachable heads that you can actually take off and like, in your hand and move it around and stuff, which was fantastic. Really, really clean facility, huge bathroom, just like really, really cool. And then in terms of the equipment, now you're a little bit limited as far as strength training goes because the dumbbells only go up to 75 pounds. Now, 99% of people are going to be fine with that. Maybe it's not ideal for some, but you could go a little bit higher rep with the 75s. Like I would say, especially if you're looking at a normal population, 99% of normal population are going to function just fine with 75-pound dumbbells and less. There's no reason to go heavier than that. So what I wanted to say was that I really, really like the equipment also. There was a lot of interesting pieces of equipment that I'd never used before. Just typical, I think it was Life Fitness that has or that Planet Fitness does their equipment and stuff. And some of the pieces were really, really nice. I like some of the exercises, some of the pieces of equipment that we used. And overall, it was just a very, very good experience that kind of opened my eyes a little bit. And then the other thing that shocked me too was the quality of physiques of somebody there. Now, I didn't necessarily see anybody that was going to go on stage, but there were a lot of guys and women that looked like they had some very, very, very respectable physiques, which is not something that most people associate with Planet Fitness. So I think that it was a really cool experience for me, just to kind of like one of those exercises, no pun intended, one of those exercises of not judging a book by its cover, because I'd never been in one before. And it was actually pretty cool. And for the price, I think that it's definitely a great option for people.
Oh yeah, that's what I tell people all the time. My brother's got a membership at Planet Fitness, and it's not for me because it doesn't have like the the barbells and all the free weights and heavy dumbbells, but it is absolutely an awesome tool for an entry level guy or girl that just needs to get moving and doing something. Like that circuit training room, that's awesome.
Yeah, they have. Are you talking about the 30-minute one?
Yeah, you just push play and roll. And it tells you what to do.
And that's where it's all the pieces of equipment. And it's like a bunch of machines, and basically it's programmed so you can get in and out in 30 minutes. And you go through basically a full body workout, a ton of different machines. And I thought that was pretty neat as well.
Yeah, whenever I went to the gym when I was staying in Myrtle Beach a couple years ago, and I actually went to a Planet Fitness. So we talked about it once. I didn't hate it. I mean, I don't think I would train there every day, but I didn't mind it.
Well, it's cool now because I have a guy so my buddy Chris, who's the guy that I work with, his friend who he met from that area was there training with us as well, and is probably going to sign up for coaching now. He said that he's going on vacation in a week or 2 or 3 weeks or something, that he was going to contact me when he gets back from vacation, because it just wouldn't be ideal to start and then a couple of days later say, hey, I'm going on vacation for a week in Vegas. So he's going to like reconnect with me afterwards. But it was so cheap that I said, and it was only like a 35-minute drive from my house, so it wasn't that far. And I told him, I said, it's so cheap, I could just buy a year membership and even use it 2 or 3 times a month at most and get my money's worth.
Yeah, exactly.
So I thought it was really neat.
Right. So yeah. So what did you guys? How many days did you train up there? It was 2 or 3, right?
Yep. And actually, to go off of what we were talking about earlier too, I ended up on, because we were talking about recovery and stuff. And this is actually the first time that I'd done this in a while. We had trained back in like pulls, so like back and biceps at my normal gym. Well, the next day, I think that was on a Wednesday. The next day, Thursday, I go down to see Chris, and he wanted to train back because that was on his schedule. And I said, you know what? We'll train back again. And I did. And that was the first time that I ever trained a body part back to back, no pun intended again. But I've never done that before. And I was actually got a really, really good quality workout. One thing that showed me was, hey, dude, you're doing a good job with recovery. Now, I obviously wasn't covered at 100%, but I didn't feel like I had any deficits there, which led me to believe that after my workout, I was probably super well hydrated. After that Wednesday workout, I probably ate, my meals well, sleep well. And then the next morning I was ready to roll and train back again if necessary.
Right.
Which is exactly
that is a good feeling whenever you're like, oh, I can do that 2 days in a row.
Yep.
Fair enough. Because I've only done it a handful of times. And early on in my workout career, it was more often than it is now, but because I just didn't know enough. And I actually did that 2 weeks ago where we finished a back workout and I missed our push workout the day before. So I did a little bit of push and then we came back in the next day and did a push workout.
Yeah.
And I was not recovered as much as like I should have been. But so that I used it the same way you did. Like, hey, I obviously need to do something a little different because I should be able to function at least 2 days in a row.
Yeah.
So I've actually upregulated water because of that particular workout to see. And I think now I bet you I would be better because I know my water's good. Because I'm back to actually tracking it.
Yeah, so I think that's counterintuitive to the whole first half of the episode when we talked about how important recovery is and off days are, and talking about it last week as well. Then we go on and saying we train body parts back to back occasionally, and it's okay. But I think that kind of brings things full circle to you can have some mishaps or things that are not optimal. For example, training the same body part back to back like that is not optimal. However, if you don't self-sabotage and keep everything else in check, like your hydration, your nutrition, your sleep, your supplementation, you'll end up coming out just fine, which was kind of the main theme that you wanted to hit on today.
Right. That is exactly what I wanted to talk about. And like you said in the beginning, we don't typically make a plan, but I just felt like after basically having 2 weeks where, I think I've trained 3 days, 4 days in the last 2 weeks, and I've had progress. There's definitely something worth talking about there. Cause that's kind of my theme with our show is using myself as an experiment for other people to learn so they don't have to necessarily go through all the trials and tribulations. You're going to have your own, but use me as an example. Like if there's, like we used to say in the beginning, early days, I'm just a fat guy running, just trying to get it done. So, but if I can do it, just about anybody can.
Yep. And I feel the same way about myself, man.
Yeah, man.
Well, I think that's a good place to wrap it up for the day. Is there anything additional that you'd like to add before we close up shop?
Just stay consistent.
Yep.
With as many aspects as you can, stay consistent.
Yep. If you stay consistent with as many aspects as you can, when things go awry, if everything doesn't go awry at once, there may be a little bit of a setback, but if you keep everything else in order, you'll come out with progress in the end. So with that, we have come to the end of another episode of the Chasing Dreams podcast with Charlie and Justin. This has been episode number 124. As always, we appreciate your listenership, and we look forward to hearing back from you guys next week.
Unbreakable, unstoppable, I'm pushed to the edge and take it all. I'm born to be untamable.